Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and this is Movie Crap. This is my weekly movie news show where I talk about movie news, trailers, and articles, and general movie stuff that I would like to talk about. Yeah, sorry I was gone last week, but here we are back again. First up, so Beyonce was announced as the voice of Nala in the live-action version of Lion King that's going to come out in July of 2019. It has long been rumored that she was going to play Nala, that they were just kind of working out details, but she is now officially playing Nala in the Lion King live action kind of update, reboot, whatever the fuck it is. And now they have a picture of the whole cast that they put out, not together, but just like who's playing what, which is sort of neat if you cared about this movie, which I don't. The interesting thing is I kept hearing about before this became official that she would be sort of doing the Elton John role as well as Nala, but it seems like that isn't happening, although the details of that confuse me because, like, wouldn't you just want to hear them do the same crap they did before? I mean, with a Beyonce remix or all that stuff, or like a Beyonce twist on it or something, I don't know. Or if there was one original song Beyonce would write it. I haven't been able to find anything about that unless someone has a different link, and if you do, put it in the comments. But as far as I know, she's not writing any songs, she's just doing the voice of Nala. Maybe she decided not to do that, maybe that was never a plan, or maybe it's gonna get announced later. But as of right now, it just seems the entire cast of Lion King was announced, including James Earl Jones, who seems to be the only one not recast, which I'm sort of okay with because he's James Earl Jones, but it's also like, why not get Jeremy Irons? Jeremy Irons is awesome also. I mean, he's not as awesome as James Earl Jones, but like, he's sort of up there. I don't know. Anyway, they're still making this thing, and Beyonce is Nala, so that's something. So there were two Last Jedi things that are sort of trailers, but not really. But you did get Luke in the Millennium Falcon, so that's something. But you got like a small TV ad sort of thing, sort of trailer. It looked like a TV ad. It's like 45 seconds, like actually literally. And then a Japanese trailer, and both had different little peeks at The Last Jedi. It is really cool seeing like C-3PO and so forth, but I think Luke in the Millennium Falcon is definitely something pretty neat. So if you want to see little, very small snippets of Last Jedi you haven't seen, then you should check both of those out. But if you want to see Luke in the Millennium Falcon, watch the teaser thing, not the Japanese trailer. But you can watch that also if you want to. I'm not going to tell you how to live your life. Sort of related to the Weinstein Company scandal is Quentin Tarantino's new film, which will be sort of based around the Manson family murders, is being shopped around to various other studios that are not the Weinstein Company. Despite his loyalty to both the Weinsteins and their staff, he is not going to try to stick with them. He's shopping around to other studios. The only studio he's not officially shopping around to is Disney, who does not do R-rated fare, and that's something Tarantino likes to do. This is pretty unprecedented, and you're going to see more of this as higher level studio executives and people are being exited from those positions. You'll see a lot of people who wouldn't work for other studios normally that will now do that. So there's going to be a lot of shakeups and kind of ripple effects and so forth. It's interesting. I actually think he might go with Universal, since Universal helped distribute Inglourious Basterds and pay for Inglourious Basterds. I could see that happening. Who knows what's going to happen? Apparently Margot Robbie is attached to play sort of the Sharon Tate part, but one interesting part that I read from the Deadline story is that Charles Manson is about as involved in this movie as Adolf Hitler was in Inglourious Basterds. So that's kind of interesting. It might just be people sort of on the outskirts of what's happening with the Manson family, but we don't really know anything beyond that. And in terms of Tarantino changes his scripts a lot, or at least reports on what Tarantino is writing change a lot. So who the fuck knows what's actually going on with that script, but apparently it is being shopped to other studios, and there might be a deal as soon as next week, but who the fuck knows, because deals don't have release dates. Also, Tarantino's looking at people, rumored to be looking at people including Leonardo DiCaprio, Brad Pitt, Samuel L. Jackson as well. Apparently there might actually be a Pacific Rim King Kong Godzilla crossover monsterverse thing. I don't really think this will happen because Godzilla and King Kong and Pacific Rim all take place during different time periods, and whether, like, you know, their activity eventually led to Pacific Rim, but it seems like they're kind of working on these Pacific Rim sequels, and then there's an idea that it might connect at some point. So it's definitely something they're actually talking about, but very loosely. We'll see how they actually end up doing it, but it's definitely something that they are at this time considering. The trailer for Paul Thomas Anderson's latest film, The Phantom Thread, finally debuted. This is, of course, the final film for Daniel Day-Lewis, supposedly, and it looks really interesting and really cool. The woman who plays his love interest, kind of, I'm curious her role in all this, because she's kind of someone I wasn't really focusing on. It's more focusing on the Paul Thomas Anderson and the Daniel Day-Lewis-ness of this, but it seems like a really cool movie, and I get excited for any Daniel Day-Lewis movie, but this looks like one of his kind of epic, more epic sort of masterpiecey things. We'll see. Another trailer that came out was Liam Neeson's The Commuter, which looks like one of those dumb Liam Neeson action movies, and, you know, looks fun. I think everyone's down for it. I believe it comes out in January. Looks perfect for January. Absolutely what we'll need then. Regal Cinemas is planning to test out dynamic ticket prices for movies, where it would be like if a movie is a hit, they would charge more, and smaller movies they would charge less. And they're going to try this out in 2018 in select markets. I go to Regal Cinemas a lot. I often quite like them, but I don't really love the idea of this because I don't think people want to spend even more at the movies. Like, that's honestly something that people already complain about. Why make that worse? I sort of get, like, if a movie's not doing well, but if a movie's not doing well, I don't think it's actually going to help it that much. Most people, they're going to go see Star Wars, they're going to go see Star Wars or a Marvel movie. That's honestly what I hear more people doing. Or if they're going to go to see a movie because they're bored, sometimes you hear of people going, okay, maybe those people would, but I don't think there are enough moviegoers for that. It's more appointment viewing, so I find this to be a pretty bad idea. I think it's something that the movie theater industry has long wanted to do, but it's something that's probably not a great idea. Movies aren't really like airplanes, and you can't really do that. They probably shouldn't do it with airplanes either, but this is not airplane crap. I guess that would be a cool show. I'm curious if it does happen in my area, or I find out it's happening. I would like to do it and maybe do a video on it. I'm sure Regal won't do that in New York, but hey, who knows? I actually hope this doesn't take off. I think it could actually really hurt movie theaters a lot more, but you know, with Movie Pass and things like that, like how would they handle it? It's kind of something that I'm not exactly sure. It worries me more than anything, really. Gareth Evans, who's the director of The Raid, is in talks to direct a Deathstroke movie, which no one's sure if this is for the DC special label stuff, for the DC not EU, because it's not called that or whatever. Apparently he's in talks with that. The thing with Gareth Evans is he's an awesome director. I think everybody loves the Raid movies, but he's been close to signing on to a variety of different high profile things, including Gambit, which I think I mentioned in a past movie crap or something, and it just like hasn't happened. This like never works out. This sounds cool. Whether Joe Manganiello, who I think was cast as Deathstroke, that's confusing when Ben Affleck was going to direct the Batman. So who knows if Joe Manganiello is still going to be Deathstroke, or maybe that's a stipulation DC and Warner Brothers is like, no, you have to do this. Who knows? But Gareth Evans apparently is in talks. We'll see if it actually happens. Creed 2, which is kind of coming together pretty quickly, finally has a release date of November 21st, 2018, which is right in time for Thanksgiving 2018, which is kind of close to what happened with the original Creed in 2015. Michael B. Jordan is attached to star. That was kind of announced with this, and Sylvester Stallone will direct. And kind of a thing added on to this, but it's a different story. MGM and Annapurna Pictures have started a distribution deal, and they will help distribute together Creed 2. This is mostly because they tried to be their own distributor with Detroit, and that didn't really work out very well. So apparently they are going to form a distribution pact, kind of the thing that a lot of people are reading into this, and they have rightful reason to read into this. Annapurna Pictures was one of the studios that was trying to kind of get the James Bond franchise, and obviously MGM was the former distributor home of James Bond, and it's been looking at other studios. And the idea that MGM and Annapurna have decided to band together might mean that Annapurna will actually get James Bond, or you could read into that in that way. I definitely understand it if you thought that, but we have no news on that James Bond movie. But it's interesting that Annapurna has gone with MGM after trying to be a distributor for one movie, but then backing out. But it seems like they're probably going to get involved in more bigger films from MGM, which is kind of interesting. I sort of liked Annapurna Pictures being who they were, but maybe it'll help make these bigger movies better, or they'll just learn more about distributing stuff or something. The trailer, the first real trailer, not a teaser trailer, for I, Tonya premiered, but a real trailer that you kind of get a what this movie is and so forth. It looks really cool. It looks sort of like Alexander Payne-y, I guess, Alexander Payne-ish, maybe that's a better way to say it. It looks funny, it looks cool, looks sort of what I'd want from it. Allison Jennings looks amazing, and I love seeing Margot Robbie as Tanya Harding. I think it's like a really cool role for her, so I'm excited. I don't know if you knew this, but Steven Spielberg has a new movie coming out this Christmas, or around Christmas or whatever, called The Post, starring Tom Hanks and Meryl Streep. It's actually the first time he's really worked with Meryl Streep. I think he like directed her doing a voiceover for some documentary or something, but it's basically like the first her acting in a Spielberg movie type of thing. We haven't really seen anything from it, so here's our first look. This picture, you can see them there in the corner there, Meryl Streep and Tom Hanks. That's all we know, seriously. That's it. It looks cool. It's about the Pentagon Papers, and it's supposed to be a big Oscar movie, even though nobody's seen it. But it's got Meryl Streep, Tom Hanks, and Steven Spielberg, so you can sort of get why people think that. What We Do in the Shadows sequel, We're Wolves, which we already knew about, but apparently Taika Waititi and Jermaine Clement are more involved than we previously thought, and are going to be help writing it, and I think Taika Waititi is directing it as well, so that's kind of good news if you're a What We Do in the Shadows fan. If you've seen Thor Ragnarok this weekend and like it, I recommend What We Do in the Shadows. It was one of my favorite movies of that year, and is one of the best comedies of this decade. So there's been a lot made of a Blade Runner 2049 4-hour cut, which is basically an assembly edit, which is sort of basically like where you take all your shots, you put it together, you assemble them in the right order. So it's not like a different cut. Apparently Denis Villeneuve doesn't really do director's cuts. His final film is the director's cut, and that's it. There's like a few cut scenes from this, but we're not going to see like 5 different cuts of this one, and I seriously doubt they're going to do this 4-hour cut into 2 things cut. It's just like an assembly edit. It's just stupid to think this was anything more. I think it's been a little bit slow on the movie news, so people are like, hey, there was an assembly edit of Blade Runner 2049, and I'm like, oh, there was one of those for Happy Death Day also, but I don't think we're gonna write about that one. So apparently, and not apparently because you probably realized it, October, it was the worst box office for October since 2007, which is not surprising because there wasn't a big hit this October. Basically, if you're wondering why other Octobers stood out, you had hits like Gone Girl, or The Martian, or Gravity, or something that came out last October. And usually if a film comes out in October, you have at least one film that makes over $100 million. We did not actually have that this October. I thought Blade Runner 2049 would have done better, and I think people thought that this October wouldn't have been as dire as it is. They probably weren't going to release bigger things because November and December are kind of like huge months with the new Star Wars movie, Justice League, and Thor, and a Pixar movie. So I understand why people kind of stood clear of it, but it is a little sad that we had a great September, but sandwiched between a shitty August and a crappier October was kind of disappointing for the movie industry. So there was a story in the LA Times about allegations of sexual misconduct by director Brett Ratner. There's a lot of these allegations coming out about a lot of different directors and actors and things right about now, and I'm not talking about a lot of, not like there's honestly too many to talk about, but the Brett Ratner one might, believe it or not, have bigger implications than we really realize. It seems like maybe not, but it could. Brett Ratner, who's most known to us as a director and a bad one, and I'm not just saying that because of these reports, like, no one likes Brett Ratner. I mean, it's like, I think the height of his filmography was like the first Rush Hour. He made X-Men The Last Stand. He made those other 2 Rush Hour movies. He made Tower Heist. Like, he just makes a lot of crap. But that's one thing. But he is also a film financier in his company Rat Pack, who have helped finance a ton of stuff at Warner Brothers. About $450 million was put into Warner Brothers over, I think, 4 years or something like that. They helped finance things like Wonder Woman, the Lego movies, and all sorts of stuff like that. Fantastic Beasts. They were really big into helping finance Warner Brothers movies, extremely so. Even are attached to things like Wonder Woman 2, Godzilla vs. King Kong, like pretty much everything. And so his allegations and what will potentially happen to him might be a little harder, because if he were to be taken out, people could theoretically, I guess, lose jobs, or these movies might not happen and things like that. There could be like huge shockwaves, and it seems like Warner Brothers is trying to handle it fairly well. His first look deal, which was already expired, Warner Brothers just didn't renew, and it looks like they were going to probably keep working with Rat Pack, and he will either have a reduced role or he will not really be working as directly with Warner Brothers. Who knows if he will just have one of those reduced roles where like he's just kind of just like taken off to the side and they just don't bring him out for the public, or if he's really being demoted down. I've never really liked Brett Ratner. In fact, I was kind of happy that he was just producing things because I wouldn't have to deal with him as a director. And the AV Club has notoriously shown this picture of him for many years now, and he has always been skeezy, claiming he had sex with Olivia Munn and then later recanting that story like a couple days later. So I'm not going to say any of this is too surprising. I still think he's a horrible garbage person, but if you had asked me like the day before any of this came out, I would have said he's a horrible garbage person. We'll see what happens, but it'll be interesting to see what happens with these higher up people because they have their name attached to so many things, and oftentimes they're the reason certain films get made and certain people have gotten to work and things like that. It's not that people shouldn't speak up. I'm actually all for people speaking up and victims of his sexual misconduct, and mostly people having to watch him jerk off, which is super gross. If that did happen, you should speak up, but I'm saying it's going to be interesting how they handle something like this, because this is different from Kevin Spacey or Harry Knowles or Devin Faraci or Harvey Weinstein. This is someone who's successfully producing and financing multiple huge hit movies that have just come out and are currently in production, but it seems like they're probably going to just find something else, and they found something else and they're going to figure it out and not have to deal with Brett Ratner. We'll see if there are other productions affected by this, but I don't think this is probably where you'll hear the end of this. I think it's more similar to the Harvey Weinstein thing than it being like the guy who directed X-Men Last Stand getting into trouble. I think he's a horrible person. He's done a lot of horrible things, but in terms of what could happen to him and Warner Brothers and stuff from their financing, I think we'll wait and see, but it actually seems like it might be nothing, but we'll see where that goes. IndieWire has posted an article that kind of goes through as the Oscar season really gets going, as it is the beginning of November. It has a list of kind of like what the major things are at play in this Oscar season. It seems like Dunkirk, as of right now in early November, is the one to beat. It also talks about Get Out, Call Me By Your Name, and The Papers, and goes through all that. It's an interesting read, and if you're especially trying to get up on the Oscar thing and what movies will be nominated, it is a good primer to start thus far. Vice made a little video about how half of the 10 blockbusters that are still in America are all in Alaska, and how it's actually very popular in Alaska because they don't have broadband internet or can't get a lot of data there, or don't have really great working internet for streaming, so they sort of actually have to use Blockbuster. So it's kind of a cute little video, and if you want to see people who are definitely still into Blockbuster, those Alaskans definitely are. The New York Times did a profile on Mark Hamill. If you love Mark Hamill as much as I do, it is worth a read. Also, The Hollywood Reporter did a profile on the Fox Kids X-Men show, which turned 25, believe it or not, over Halloween, and goes over kind of the story of that and how it got approved and how it almost looked like that show wasn't going to happen. That singer for Screen Crush wrote 2 really good articles since the last time I did Movie Crap. One was how Book of Henry is a once-in-a-generation good-bad movie, which is kind of interesting. Once I was reading about Book of Henry, I was like, holy shit, this movie sounds unbelievable, but it is real. And he also wrote another thing about how Tony Stark, the character that Robert Downey Jr. played, is a perfect metaphor for Marvel Studios, which is also really a really good read, actually. And finally, The Village Voice's critic wrote about the greatest review I've ever read, which is a nice little piece written about criticism. So that was Movie Crap. Sorry I wasn't here last week. I was on a trip and I was doing the Halloween week of videos were coming out and so forth. But since the last Movie Crap, I had the following videos. Batman vs. Two-Face, which was the Adam West's final swan song as Batman. I reviewed that. An old review omnibus of horror movie reviews, including my review of Crybaby Lane. Seoul Station, which is an animated zombie film from South Korea. My September 2017 video. A movie review vote video, which has already been counted and stuff, and that video will be up for my patrons probably tomorrow. and the Halloween week videos, which included reviews of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Trick or Treat, The People Under the Stairs, Dracula's Daughter, and Night of the Living Dead. And finally, right before this video, I put up a review of The Florida Project. I will be back next week. Hopefully there will be better movie news than there was this week. I hope you enjoyed what I could say about what was movie news this time, and thank you all very much for watching. Comment below if you'd like to talk about any of the movie news that I talked about in this episode of Movie Crap, and subscribe if you would like to.